Del Centro de Emprendimiento e Innovación I3Lab, les damos la más cordial bienvenida a la charla de la academia a la industria. Aprendizajes, retos y oportunidades de la transferencia de tecnología, creado con el apoyo de Blir Network Ecuador y dirigida para todo el personal de docentes e investigadores del SPOL. Adicionalmente, el Centro de Emprendimiento e Innovación I3Lab y SPOL cuenta con el apoyo de la Comisión Europea en cada uno de estos eventos, por formar parte del proyecto TETRIX, que tiene el objetivo capacitar a las instituciones de educación superior en el diseño e implementación de estructuras de la innovación y de la transferencia de tecnología. Damos inicio a esta charla el día de hoy agradeciendo a cada uno de ustedes por la presencia. Hoy se pretende brindar un enfoque a nivel general de los retos y oportunidades que se presentan en el ecosistema de la transferencia tecnológica a través de los diferentes resultados de la investigación. Esta charla estará a cargo de la doctora Ljiljana Platisa, experta en comercialización de tecnología de la Universidad de Ghent. Directora del Centro de Innovación iKnow, cuenta con amplia experiencia en el ámbito de la tecnología basada en el software, la metodología innovadora para el procesamiento inteligente de la información, sistemas informáticos, gestión de datos, modelos matemáticos, fusión de datos de sensores, visión artificial, incluyendo aplicaciones como la automotriz, movilización urbana inteligente, entre otras. Damos la más cordial bienvenida a la doctora Platisa, recordando a todos nuestros participantes que pueden realizar todas las preguntas o dudas en el chat. Welcome, Platisa. You can start sharing.
Hello. Thank you for the introduction, and hello to everyone. So let me share my screen so we can get started. Okay. I hope that you can see my screen now.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So, hello from my side. The plan has changed a little bit from the original, so I'm joining you virtually. But yeah, we had a lot of practice over the past few years, so I hope this is going to work out fine and we have a new chance to see each other in person. So I will share some of my experiences with you today, but let me start please with a very brief introduction about myself. So you have heard about the current professional side. So where I started was in Serbia, doing my master's thesis in telecommunications. So somewhat different engineering direction from what I'm doing today. And then I came to Belgium to do my doctoral studies and then started working on digital image analysis and continued here. So I am now working in a position that I find is very exciting because I have an opportunity to bring together academic researchers with the industrial experts and to work together on bringing research results outside the academia and actually enabling them to create some impact for the society, for the economy. So let me tell you very briefly about the two institutions that I am affiliated with. So Ghent University, already a 200-year-old university, which for our local environment, so it's something we were proud of. A few years ago, there was a big celebration. We are a pretty large university, again, in local terms here, so with 11 faculties on different disciplines, and these days it's quite important for many challenges to actually have access to different disciplines and try to work together to build solutions for the problems of today. So we are with more than 8,000 researchers, which reflects on doctoral students, postdoctoral students, and also professors. And within the university as a whole, so that includes also, there is a university hospital in Ghent. So we are with over 50,000 employees and staff. And one point which makes us also proud of is that about 12% of the staff is international, so beyond the local borders. Now, I work very closely also with the IMEC. There is a collaboration with a number of mostly ICT-oriented groups at Belgian universities or Flemish universities, with a research institute here in the neighborhood, IMEC, who is mostly specialized in nanotechnology, but since a few years ago, they have expanded, and we are now working more to build integrated or co-developed solutions where hardware and software will be closely matched, so that the offerings get more personalized or more tailored to the specific challenges and needs of the customers. So there again, there is a large number of researchers, around 4,500. Really, there is even more international R&D talents gathered together to work on some of the most challenging topics. There is a lot of activities and incentives to go have more spin-offs, so more technology getting out to make actual impact and use for the society. So likewise, the universities and the research center here locally, so there is a lot focus or attention paid to creating spin-offs and startups. Now, some photos to give you a bit of a gist of where we are located. So this is one of the, well, here in the back, you can see the rectorate building of the university. Here is where we are on the map. And this is just some teasers of the city and the university. And also, yeah, things that we would most often offer to our guests when you come here to get some sweets, chocolates, and of course, taste the beer. Voila, I had a very nice intention and was so enthusiastic to come to Ecuador in person. However, this was the furthest that I could reach due to the current situation with the airports and so, but then, yeah, let's stay hopeful for the next time. Okay, now going to the technology transfer topics. So this slide is more like setting the mood for what we are going to talk about. So we all know there are so many exciting inventions coming out of the academia and already being there available for use to the society, to the community. And of course, what we are working on is to create more and more of such solutions. Now, I don't have a very good insight into the profile of all of you in the audience, but this is something which I assume most of you will be familiar with, either from own experience or by figuring out how the things work. So when we have some interesting, exciting discovery in the research, in the lab, how we go about to the actual innovation. So how we, what are the steps to bring this to real life, to actual end user. So typically at universities, we start with invention disclosure or some kind of report about the research results. And then we go to the phase of evaluation. So typically with the tech transfer office or knowledge transfer or some experts in your institution that could be there to help the researchers to actually make the evaluation. And this refers to, for one, whether we can really identify market interest and the potential for bringing this technology to the use, and then also what will be the ways to make protection of the intellectual property that is there behind. So typically these are patents, but more and more today we see technology that is being built, but which is either not directly suitable for patenting, or maybe there is no commercial interest to go for patents. So this is taking some analysis and decision about how to deal with the protection of IP. And then we are there to do marketing, which means not necessarily creating flyers, but more thinking of the story. So what are the unique values of our invention that we can bring forward to the industry or to the society, and point them in the right direction to actually recognize the value, to get hooked to the technology that we are bringing to the market, that we are bringing as an enabler for maybe new products, new services, which the industry can offer, or we can go for spin-offs ourselves. The next step is then identifying potential customers, partners, and negotiating licensing deals. Oftentimes the technology that comes out of the university is not immediately ready for production, so there will be an intermediate step between an actual product that goes in the market or service and what comes out of the university. So that as well takes some time and investment, so product development. And then eventually we come to the financial, to the commercial use and implicitly financial return, which usually at universities, some of this is going to come back and feed into new research. And so that's how we create a cycle. Now, the main actors of this cycle, or the main actors of the innovation process are undoubtedly inventors. So the first people who will make this possible. But then in order to have this innovation actually being used, we need users, and we need to find our users, to teach them sometimes about how to use the technology, what are the benefits, and to have a relationship with the users to make this possible. And then there are enablers, and with this I mean like funding agencies, sponsors, tech transfer offices, so anyone who can help support the innovation actually come to life, different policy organizations and so on. So this is like the ecosystem of innovation. And you will see throughout the session today, I have included some slides from a few recent reports that refer to technology or knowledge transfer. Most of it is from Europe, some from the States, or maybe even Asia. I don't have a lot of data from Latin America, but that's where it would be nice to have some conversation, to exchange a little bit the experiences. So you can see here different numbers of contract collaborative research agreements, then the numbers of patents that have been filed, granted, spin-offs that are being created, what revenue is coming back from licensing the IP, also numbers of license agreements, and then startups that are being created. So what is the role of technology transfer staff? Most of them will be involved in research support. But then you can see that also there is substantial percentages of KTO staff that put their efforts into supporting researchers in the direction of commercialization, so licensing, reaching out to identifying the right partners, also entrepreneurship, so mostly about spin-offs, and then business development, which is somewhere in the intersection of all these sectors. So you will see in the slides, I have included links to all the reports and all the materials that are being used, so you can still afterwards have a look for more details when you get interested. Okay, this brings us to the outline for today. So I wanted to go together with you through several topics. I can hear some noise, but yeah, so if you want to interrupt me with a question or something, feel free to, please, although I think that Anna has asked that we put the questions in the chat, but for me, either way is okay. So what we are going to talk about some practices at Ghent University. Now, I will try to go through this quite quickly, so we get more time to discuss about the other topics. So research with industry. So I want to tell you one way of how we can distinguish between the different industry agreements, so which type of collaborations there are, and maybe give some ideas about the IP models that we are working with these days. Then about protecting IP, so some arguments as to why we may decide not to go for a patent, or what are the key questions there to consider. and then again, how the licensing models can be built. And in the end, we wanted to talk together a bit about the value proposition. So this is something that many researchers are struggling with. So they are very good at technical details, at all the features and the details of the methodology which they are coming forward with. However, the perception of the outer world about where the value really is, so it's not always so easy to identify, and that's something that, of course, is very important when we go out to talk to potential partners. So let's kickstart with how we are working at Ghent University. So there is quite some students present at several campuses throughout the city, like over 70,000 students. And then you can see here professional researchers refer here to professors. So there is like close to 1,500 professors and another 1,500 of postdoctoral researchers. So postdoctoral researchers especially have an important role in building new inventions together with their professors, of course, and together with pre-doctoral researchers. But this is like in the career stage where they often, or most often, if we have a spin-off, it will be taken up by a postdoctoral research. Of course, no rules, but just some evidence-based information. Now, next to the main core business of the university, which is education, of course, we are spending a lot of time and effort doing research, both fundamental and applied. And then we work with industry more and more through services, so providing some consultancy. I will talk a little bit more about what we exactly mean with this in a few moments. But then also partnerships with industry where we are doing research together, or we are closely collaborating, so supporting companies to bring innovation to the market, to offer more efficient products, services to the customers, but then also to make their internal processes more efficient, more productive. And of course, creation of spin-offs. So there are different opportunities to interact with companies, with the local environment, also international, and so through different formal ways of collaboration. Now, how the technology transfer office is organized at our university, there is like central and decentral part. Centrally, we have support for especially IP advising and legal advising, also for grants. So there are different types of European local grants, and then we have some colleagues who are really versed into those things, and they can provide support for the researchers when new submissions are there or when contracts need to be signed with the consortia. And then to more closely, so this is like centrally to handle like high level different issues that are arising. But then we also have a decentral part of the tech transfer office, which are in the format of business development centra. So we have about 25 or now even close to 30 different centra, like the one that I am working with. And so colleagues who are taking my position are mostly there to support researchers to identify the partners and partnerships, so opportunities for collaboration, but also to facilitate some contacts with the industry so that the researchers can early on find out about what is really acceptable and what is needed in the market, and what is maybe going in the wrong direction, and maybe they need to rethink about how they want to structure and how they want to focus the research. So here you can see that these business development centra are placed in different segments, so from health tech to even social sciences and humanities, and then to engineering. And myself, I am involved with the research, with the business development center, which focuses on intelligent information processing. And what we do basically is different topics related to information management, processing, modeling, big data. So we work with heterogeneous data sources with different types of image data, text data, some other sensor measurements, and then looking for efficient, really custom tailored solutions, which are then high performance. So we are handling those, let's say, cases where some of the traditional general purpose solutions cannot work good enough. And then it's about really tailored or personalized solutions to enable insights. Two focus areas for the applications are smart mobility, including autonomous vehicles, and applications that are evolving around the unmanned aerial vehicles. However, we are not limited exclusively to that. Back to the global picture of the university as a whole. So in terms of research collaborations, so we work, of course, a lot with funding. I mean, we always work with funding, but here we mean we actually with subsidies. So starting from a very local, like Flemish regional, then national in Belgium, and then European a lot. Outside Europe, it's more difficult. There is not that many opportunities. So there will be some exceptions, but that's not the main channel, so to say. And then without funding, so there we mean funding comes from the companies or sometimes even from the university itself. And there it's a lot of bilateral, but also multi-partner collaboration with companies both locally and internationally. Another very important and effective mechanism that brings us close to the companies are the two science parks that are linked to the university. So one is in Ghent, one is in Ostend, which is a city here on the seaside in Belgium. So their companies actually have their offices. So you can see in one of these pictures also a number of companies that are located on the same physical place where also university offices are located. So this is one of the campuses of the university where a Faculty of Engineering is located. And so this really stimulates collaboration even only by just people being in close proximity to each other. And so it creates some opportunity for spontaneous discussions and identification of the opportunities to approach solving some of the problems together. Okay, and as a final point regarding the university itself, so I wanted to mention one example of how it looks like when we have a more structural cooperation with the company. So there are not that many companies with whom we have this, but some of the larger local companies would be typical cases for this kind of collaboration. So then it means really more serious commitment from and also involvement, both from the side of the company and from the side of the university. So we will be then together early on identifying interesting research problems where university can help. We'll also involve different disciplines from the university depending on the problem. And so yeah, this really creates like a basis for more in-depth collaboration, and then also gives some more certainty also for the researchers so that they can really think ahead with the company. They can together design the roadmaps for research and make progress there. So this is about research projects where we are solving specific challenges from the side of the company, but also the other side, we identify topics that are interesting to research and can be relevant for the company in future, but it's still unclear. So that kind of research as well. And then companies are also supporting PhD students and master students, or sometimes, for example, giving a topic to a master student so that they can very closely then work with both supervisor from a company and from the university. Okay, so if there would be any questions or comments at this point, please feel free, especially maybe comments, and then we can pick up the questions towards the end. Okay, otherwise I will continue, and then we can always get back to discussing any points. Okay, so the next point I wanted to talk to you about is collaboration with industry. So here you can see several types of contracts or agreements that we are typically using with industry. Starting from services, in which case basically this is more really like a service. So a company will come to us for some maybe specific equipment that we have, like sometimes it's about scanners, X-ray, or sometimes it's 3D printers with some very high performance possibilities. And then so it's like a unique equipment which they could then get access to, and then we will provide support. So this is as a service, not very attractive for from the research point of view. However, since the resources are there, it's of course reasonable that we would make it available for use also to the environment. Of course, these services are paid services. Consultancy. So in this case, our researchers, typically then senior ones, will support the industry with expert advice or with some analysis using their specialist knowledge and skills. These are typically the kind of tasks where it's really just enough that they can put their knowledge into use. So these are no high risk research challenges where we need to spend a lot of time and effort. So these are limited in scope. Typically not a lot of interest on publishing these kinds of results. However, it can happen that some of this work will lead to creation of new intellectual property. So these are typically also addressed in the agreements. And we negotiate these deals all case by case. So it's mostly throughout agreements which are outside of the subsidy frameworks. Negotiation goes case by case. So we will look at the needs of the company, what kind of research is being done, what results are being created, and then we think about who has interest in what, and that's how the models are being made. I will give you some examples shortly. Now, coming to contract research or collaborative research. So the main difference between the two is that in contract research, it's really the university alone who is doing the research, and the company is there to come forward with a definition of the project. So they have some needs, requests, and so we will discuss together if we can help them, then we can step into a contract research. So this is a typical research project. So we are really addressing some challenges. When I mention here research risks, it's about doing research doesn't mean that we are always going to achieve what we aim for exactly. So we will do the experimentation, the research, but it may end up very successful, and then we have an invention, but it may as well be that we discover something what we were not after, or that maybe we are not able to achieve at this moment with the technology that is around certain performance, which is maybe desired, or things like that. So that's what I mean with the risks. And then the IPR will be negotiated case by case, as I mentioned. Now, what is different in collaborative research is that there will be more partners, and that's not only universities doing research or development, but that's we are working there together, really collaborating. And also there, sometimes it will be the ideas will come from the university, sometimes. I'm sorry. Okay, it was maybe an accidental noise. Okay, so this is briefly about different types of the contract. This is not an exhaustive list, of course, but just some more commonly used examples. Now, I have included here a slide to say that at Europe, in Europe at least, so we need to be also very aware of the fact that yeah, the public universities are funded from public money. So there are some very strict regulations, especially watched after in the last few years, where actually there is a European state aid regulation which requests that universities are providing their services, research services at market price when they work with private entities, so with companies. And this is in order to prevent, on the one hand side, competition, so that companies would not come to the university because the university is cheaper than maybe other institutions who could offer the same or similar service. But then also because the university staff is funded from the public money, and so it needs to be to the benefit of everyone in the same extent, so not to have to give advantage and an economic advantage to one entities and not to the others. Concerning industry agreements, I included here some statistics from the same European report that I mentioned before. So this is a survey-based report, so it's not like to the last digit probably correct, but then you can see some trends. So in terms of number of agreements, there is by large the most of consultancy agreements, and then you can see collaborative and contract research takes some still substantial portion. However, when you look at the income, these consultancy agreements, as I mentioned before, these are typically small tasks where companies turn to universities, and then the income that comes from those agreements is not that substantial. But the most income through contracts is coming through collaborative research, also thanks a lot to all kinds of subsidy programs. However, also other types of collaborative projects, and then contract research agreements. So companies are realizing more and more that they need to innovate, and for that they often turn to universities for support. Now to give you some example, maybe we can immediately go to this example on how we agree on IP ruling. So we are doing a research project. We are going to create some interesting research results, which basically make up intellectual property. And then it's about how we are going to deal with these results. So this depends on a number of factors. First of all, it depends on the contribution. So which party is contributing what. It's interesting maybe in contracts where a company comes to the university, so we can do some research for them. It doesn't immediately mean, because they are paying for this, that they will get all the IP. Typically, it's not like that. So this is one way of how we can split the ownership and the rights on the IP. Of course, as I told you before, always case by case, we look at the details and we come to an agreement. So when it's about background, typical agreement is that everybody keeps their own background, also the ownership, and then if a company will need any of this background from the university when they want to exploit the results that are coming out of the project, they will come back to the university, and then we will make the IP available for licensing for them on a non-exclusive basis and fair conditions. Now, what happens to the results that are created during the project? one way to, or what we often see if it's collaborative project, so more than one party is doing the work, then we can split the results into exclusive and joint. And what I mean there is exclusive are those results where one party is working on some tasks, and every result that are coming out of that work, so they will be owned by the party that creates them. So if the university is doing it, then it's ownership of the university. If company is doing it, it's their ownership, or if it's another institute, doesn't matter. However, when we work with a company alone, for example, so it's a bilateral agreement, and then some results are created even only by the university. We are looking at what is the nature of these results. What happens often in, for example, in video analysis projects. So you can have results which are kind of generic. So something about segmenting the imaging, detecting objects. So the basic algorithms you can use to detect pedestrians in the street, but with a little bit of adaptation, you can use them also to detect maybe customers in a shopping mall, or you can use it to detect some other kind of objects, maybe on the beach. And so this is a generic part of the technology, and typically this is not the competitive advantage for the company. However, for the university is interesting because we can use it for other projects, other research. And so then we would say these are generic results, and these will be owned by the university. And then any part of the results which are really very specific to the use case of the company or to the market segment of the company, and then this can be classified under specific results, and then the ownership goes to the company. This is one way of seeing it. And then if we are working together on creating some results, then this is what is jointly owned. And we prefer to go with equal shares, but yeah, can be discussed. So this is about the ownership. Now, what is interesting is what are the rights for use after the project. So the company is usually doing a research project because they want to use these results to create a product or to create a service. And so how can they use these results? So again, for exclusive results, each party who owns the results, they can use them as they wish, of course. And for joint project results, here again, there could be different models, but like one kind of administratively easier model is that each party has the right to use the results as they wish without financial compensation or without prior notification to the other party, as long as it's non-exclusive right to use. Sometimes universities prefer to do it a little bit differently, so that at least they get a notification so that we are aware that somebody is using these results, and then financial compensation may or may not be involved. But the interesting part is what happens, for example, here, a company, let's say a company owns their specific results, but then they will need also these generic results so that they can make the specific results run. So if they have an algorithm that processes images coming from a camera on the street, for example, to, I don't know, count the cars, detect the bicycles or something. So they will need all this together to have really a solution. So what would be typically then agreed is that university grants a partner, a company, a fully paid up and non-exclusive license. So it means they don't have to pay anything extra. Just at the end of the project, they immediately have the right to make use of these generic results for the specific purpose which will be defined. So this is also an important aspect. So when it's about generic results, even if a company needs to have exclusivity in certain segment of the market, it leaves us open space to use it in other segments. So maybe they need to use it just for monitoring of traffic, road traffic, but then we are free to use it in any other context. Or even we can say that the company has a right to, not exclusively, but just the right to use the results in this specific segment. Sometimes this can also be time limited, but yeah, these are some of the more creative aspects of defining an agreement. So it's really important that we talk to each other, that we understand who needs and wants to do what with the results, and then we make agreements. For the university is always important that we keep the rights, so even for what is exclusive sometimes, important of course that we can use it for internal research and education purposes. We can give a notice to the company, but we need to keep that right. But sometimes it's agreed indeed that for a certain period of time or for certain specific segments, we will restrain from working with other commercial partners in that domain. Okay, now I am looking at the time. So maybe if you are up to it, I would love to hear from you about what is your experiences. So how often do you get engaged with companies with maybe this direct contract, so not through funded, so subsidized project, but really projects where companies are coming to you to do some research together? I can see a hand being raised. I don't know, Anna, if you want to.
Hi.
Yes.
Yeah, hi. There is a question from David Chan. I think if you can see in the chat, he said, could you please elaborate on how Ghent is measuring the social impact in its tech transfer effort?
How we are measuring the social impact?
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't think that we have specific matrix on how we create this impact. Also because myself, I'm more involved in economic impact that we are creating as a business developer. So at the level of university, we have also another, so I talked to you about tech transfer office and business development center. Next to business development center, we also have 10 or 12 centra that are more focused on creating social impact, as you say, and more creating collaborations, project where we are going to create social impact. So either working with local communities or organizing some events where we can promote certain policies or certain approaches, ideas. So it is more with that segment of activities that we are covering for creating social impact in a more really direct sense, right? So I think I would need to look back at that segment to give you some more concrete information about the ways of how this is being measured. I can say for projects which are technology oriented, creating really social impact. So we are encountering for that through the nature of projects that we are doing. So we are trying to always, but we are always really looking to select projects that can create the most of impact in the sense of improving the quality of life. Or if you look at technology in medical sector, for example, then the quality of life, but also all different parameters around the treatment of patients. In the sector of more engineering, like topics that I am closely involved with, so it's about safety, safety of traffic road users, so bicycles, pedestrians. Also in industrial environments. So when you have people who are working around large machines or are moving in a bit more dangerous zones. So there we are creating impact through building technology that can assist humans or that can, in some very dangerous cases, even replace. Of course, this is evolving, but not all fully there. We have a lot of projects that deal with, for example, use of drones, like flying drones for inspection, like offshore, or inspection in on building sites, where again there is a lot of danger for humans. So then we look with the workers, with the companies who are busy there, how we can assist, how we can support this with the technology. So those are mostly the ways of from the technology side, how we are looking to create impact, and then from the social side, this is not directly my domain, so I am not able to give you the very specific details, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Doctor. I think Sofia Lopez raised her hand. I think she has a question for you.
Sure.
Please.
Oh, hi, Professor. Good morning. Thanks
Hello.
a lot for hi. Thanks a lot for your presentation. I think I have a feeling I am the quality assurance department director, and we have some information about the incomes coming from these projects with industry. I perceive that the local companies over here are looking for fast and cheap solutions. So I can tell that the capstone projects that we do with a lot of our students are very well welcome and used by the companies. However, for us, it has been very difficult to jump to the next level and have a research kind of project. Even in consultancy, the companies over here are looking for very cheap solutions, very short term. So in that kind of a scenario, what would you suggest for us?
Yeah. Thank you for your comment. I can say, yeah, to some extent, we see the same thing. Companies, especially smaller companies, are looking for fast solutions and not really breakthroughs in research sense. So they are facing certain difficulty with the current solution that they have, or they have a new challenge in the market, and then they try to quickly solve this problem. And it is indeed a challenge also for us, because most of the researchers who are capable of doing this kind of projects are often PhD students. Some groups are larger, and then they will have postdocs who can take up this kind of short-term assignments. But of course, then it becomes very difficult for planning. So this is also a struggle at our side. We look at these projects as like an entry point. So when we can do a small project with a company with whom we have not worked before, for example, and this is a successful collaboration, then oftentimes it's going to lead to a follow-up project, but it can happen maybe not immediately. And that is also something that we see. So we do a small project with a company, it's maybe a small company or medium-sized company, and they're happy with the results, but they will not be able, or they will just have no direct interest to immediately follow up together with us in a more extensive project. However, it happens not that rarely that after a few years, maybe they will come back to us and say, okay, we did that project together, now we have this new challenge, can we do something together? What is also helping in our environment is that locally there are some subsidy opportunities where companies are actually incentivized to work with universities. So we can apply for funding together, a university and a company, and then the university gets fully paid. The company gets some percentage government subsidy. So that's a little bit also incentive for a company. So yes, they have still some cost. It's not fully subsidized project, but it's at advantageous conditions, and they get the opportunity to have access to the research results and to work with a university. But on the first step, I think it's this trust and confidence. So sometimes companies are a little bit reluctant to step into collaboration with university, because some are perceiving universities as, okay, it's like free setup where you are looking for open solutions, not so much goal and target oriented. So for companies, they have a deadline and they need to deliver by that date. And in university, it's not exactly that mentality. So it takes some time, and I have experienced that honestly a lot in the recent time, because there are groups at university who are already versed working with companies, and they find their ways how to go about these things. But there are other groups who are completely like, oh no, if we don't have a 4-year project, we will just not start anything. But for a company to commit to a 4-year research project, that's very difficult. It's only large companies that I see enter into, or these more strategic collaborations that will step into something like that. Most companies, like most of our projects with industry, are 1 to 2 years duration. And then these small projects, as you say, I fully agree, it's difficult to manage that at the university side, but we try to see them as an entry point into a future collaboration. And it's good, I think, to openly talk with the company already early on that, okay, this is not what we commonly do. This is very challenging for us to handle. But if we see a potential in doing something more substantial in the future, then we will look for ways and we will step into such a collaboration.
Great. Thank you, Professor.
Most welcome.
Thank you. I think we have a question also from Daniel Ochoa. Is similar from what asked Sophia, is how long does it take on average to agree on a joint project with a company?
I would say it depends on the nature of the project. I mean, if it's a small project, like what Sophia was saying, so I think it can be quite quickly. Within, let's say, I mean, to agree on the technical scope of the project, it can be fast within a few weeks, I would say. Depends on the availability of readiness. Yeah, sometimes professors are not readily available or so, but yeah, I would say within a few weeks with professors who have some experience, that can be done fast. Then, of course, there is the administrative part, signing the contracts and negotiating all the details. That takes. It depends. It depends also on the size of the company. Because with smaller companies, it goes very fast. With large companies, their legal and IP cycle is also long as on the university side. So that can take some months. But what we also often see, if there is some trust and if it's a small project, then we can push for it and have it all arranged within a couple of weeks so that the work can start. But it depends, right? If a research group has no one available at the moment to do the work, I mean, we can make the agreements, but then we need to postpone a little bit the execution of the project. So this is really something which varies a lot. If we are talking about a larger project, like 2-year, 4-year project, then it takes a couple of months until we have. So we start always with the definition of the technical scope. But we have a budget in mind such that the technical scope can fit there. And then we figure out all the details. So my experience, it goes best if we discuss business and research in parallel. So then we seem to converge at about the same moment and the work in that start.
Okay, thank you, Professor. Juan Manuel, I think, have a question.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Dr. Platisa. We are really enjoying your talk. I have a small question. Well, here in Ecuador, the relationship between the industry and the academia is still in early stages, I think. I heard sometime from somebody that we are like 50 or 60 years behind compared to countries like Belgium or other fully developed countries. I was wondering how can we go about catching the attention of the industry? How can we, or how did that start, for instance, in Belgium? Like, how can we go about making the industry to realize the advantages of working with the universities and collaborating with us, investing in us?
Thank you for your comment and your question. So what I observe and what is my experience, things are taking some time with the industry indeed to build this trust, to have the industry feel comfortable that when they are doing some work with the university, that they can really kind of feel confident that on the one hand side, the information is kept confidential. Sometimes this is important or oftentimes this is important for industry. Also that they can expect really some output. So industry is typically looking to have some checkpoints. So most companies that we work with, that I am involved in, so we will have like every 2 weeks or typically like that, we will have some meetings with representatives of a company and of the university to discuss the progress over the past time, past 2 weeks. Then we agree on what's the planning for the coming 2 weeks. And so there is a big plan at the beginning of the project, but then throughout the project, companies are typically very interested to be actively involved and to be able to keep track of the progress. So of course, sometimes things are not going exactly as planned. So that happens, it's research. But then this is like the moment where we have an opportunity to talk to each other, to see how we can best go about it, how to address the problems. Maybe we need to change a little bit direction. Maybe we need to drop some task and focus on another one, which we didn't think was going to be that challenging. But if the company has an opportunity to stay on board with us, and this is something that usually helps when we are having the discussion before the project gets started, so that we give them this information that we say, okay, this is a common way of working for us. We actually expect them to be involved. And then it's people who are involved are not high up managers, but people who can follow the technical content and who can really give some technical feedback. If there is really an issue, then it will evolve further in the management. But this kind of checkpoints is helping to build trust and confidence from the side of the company, because then at every moment they know where we are in the progress with the project. And starting with these small projects, like if we can start with, when we have a contact with a new company, what often happens is we start with a master thesis project where there is even no expenses whatsoever. I mean, they are paying nothing. Actually, the university is professors, researchers are putting in their time, but okay, a master student needs to do their master thesis in any case, professor needs to supervise. And so we then use a topic from the company. Maybe they will provide the data, we will have some consultations. Sometimes the student will visit the company and spend there some time. It can be done in different ways. Some companies prefer to really have students in their offices, the others not. But this kind of very low risk collaborations is what helps to build trust and to build relationship, and then we can gradually, so this is unfortunately not a very quick process, so it takes time and patience to build the relationship with the companies. And it's okay, the environment here in Belgium, as I mentioned, there are some subsidies which are supporting collaboration between industry and academia, so that is helping, of course, because it's de-risks the whole investment for the companies. But nevertheless, the relationship, I think, is the key element in that. And the more that companies realize that they need to bring innovation to the market, and especially when they have no internal R&D, then they need to turn to the university. And if they feel confident of doing that, that is helping. So I would say patience and go in small steps.
Thank you, Doctor. We have another question from Daniel. He said, which is the profile of the research staff in the tech transfer office? Are they professors, postdocs, or external research?
In the tech transfer office. So business developers like myself, so we are typically with PhD degrees and in the domain on which the business development center is focusing. So like in my case, I have the background in digital image analysis, and the consortium that I work with is about data analysis, including the image analysis. And then colleagues who are working in the, let's say, photonics, they will have background there. So they have actually the domain background, and they are able to communicate to a certain extent the topics which are being researched. In the central tech transfer office, there the profiles are very different. So we have IP experts, for example, so they are really into intellectual property and legal background. So there it's more, how should I say it? It's more domain specialists, but on what they are dealing with them. So IP, legal, different types of contracts, business development there is central, so it will vary. So we have a few colleagues who are coming from the industry, and then each of them will have a different background.
Okay, thank you. I think it's all the questions we have for now.
Okay, perfect. Thanks a lot for having some feedback. It makes it also more, more involving for myself, because I can get some gist of how you are perceiving the talk. Okay, so let's move on to the IP protection topic. So okay, I'm trying to move to my next slide. Well, intellectual property rights. So we're talking about property. So with this property, we can do the regular stuff. We can buy, we can sell, we can license. Companies can use it as security in some cases when it's interesting. But basically, from the point of a research institute or a university, we look at intellectual property often in terms of patents. So if we are going to protect the IP, then it will be most of the time patent protection. Some cases we will think about trademark or design rights, which will go to the registration. And then these trademarks and design rights, they can also stay without really formal registrations. Then unregistered IP that basically come automatically and which are free of any charge. The most well-known one is the copyright. So this is very interesting for software, for example. So actually in most of my cases, I have copyright as a protection mechanism. In software, it's either not possible or too difficult to go for a patent. And then I know at least in Europe, I'm not sure other locations, there is kind of a new right, which is database rights. So basically when we can prove that we have put in some substantial effort into structuring the database, organizing, cleaning up data, doing some any kind of management of data, which will then be serious and require really effort and time. Then we build a database, and basically we own the rights on that database, not on the data itself, but on the database and that structure. So this is more and more interesting these days also. And then of course, secrets. Sometimes companies will even choose to protect their IP by keeping it secret, because in the case of patent applications, in the end, the idea gets disclosed. However, we keep the ownership of that. So what are the main difficulties or the main points for thinking in case of a patent? So of course, we have a legal right to prevent others from exploiting the invention, which is, I think, interesting, especially for companies. And then on the downside, it costs a lot of time and it costs money to keep a patent active. So starting from the filing step and then prosecution and then even maintenance or renewals of the patent. So these are important things to keep in mind when we make a choice to be filed for a patent or not. And then with the unregistered rights, of course, so there is no cost. We don't have to do basically anything. It's good to keep some records so that we can, if needed, prove that this is actually our invention, because the burden of proof in this case is actually with the owner. So we don't have any registration. So if anybody maybe uses a copy of your software without the proper license or agreement, then you will need to prove if you're going to go after them. But okay, let's look at how about do we go for it or not. So typically after disclosure of invention, so let's say researchers have created something, they think it's very interesting, promising technology, and now they want to see do we go for a patent. So at most universities, I think there will be a predefined form where the tech transfer office is asking researchers to make a description, brief about the technology that has been developed. And then it's the IP advisor, in our case also business developer and researcher, who sit together to look at what is the best way to go forward. Now, are we going to file for a patent? First, we need to check whether this is really a valid case for filing a patent. And to be that, it has to be novel. So we need to check whether there is any prior art that already solves the problem in the same way as we are doing it. Typically, researchers are good at following up on this as long as it's in their domain. If it's an accidental discovery, then of course we need to check more thoroughly. Is there an inventive step? So it must not be something obvious, but there needs to be an invention. And then it's also important for a patent that there is industrial applicability, because that's why we want to protect them. So it should be commercially important. If this is all satisfied, then we stand the chance of filing a patent, and then we need to look, is it a good idea to do so? I mean, do we have market potential? Most of the time we will not know at the time of just considering do we file a patent or not. Most of the time there will be no specific partner or company that we want to license to, or maybe the idea of a spin-off is not very clear yet. But then it's about trying to a little bit evaluate, maybe do some desk research, or maybe even make some contacts with the industry to try and get some feeling whether this is interesting to go for a patent. And then we need to think about what will be the costs involved versus the income that we expect to gain. So if we assume that everything is successful, that we can have a license deal, so can we expect some reasonable financial balance? And these are the main points to think about. Some very obscure cases, it might be too difficult to enforce the patent, but this is not something that is applicable to many of the inventions. And this is also something best discussed with the IP advisors. So that's why this profile is very important in tech transfer teams. Of course, if we conclude that a patent is not the best solution, then we look at what else we can do or we may need to do in terms of protection of IP. For example, very important, are we going to publish or not? The researchers want to publish, of course. That is also one of the social impact, if you wish, but definitely something like one of the KPIs for the researchers. And in principle, all researchers want to go and publish about their discoveries. However, sometimes it's wiser to wait a bit with the publication until we have secured what is necessary to be able to valorize the technology. So either to make a license, or maybe if we are going to make a spin-off based on technology that is not going to be patented, or maybe just software which is cannot be patented, maybe it's wise that we wait a bit until disclosing the details of the discovery. So this is basically important to look at these things, ideally together with an IP advisor, and then take the decisions about the next steps. And so once we know what is the strategy, then we start marketing. So we look at how to propose our unique selling point or unique value proposition. And then we make contacts, look for potential partners, and then see how it's working. What happens often here is that we are iterating, right? So it's I think in a few cases that we decide the strategy at some point and we just go straight forward to it. So oftentimes we will need to go back and change something in the marketing or change something in the strategy even, and work with it further. But it's important to be kind of on top of what is going on and to be critical. So if we see that something is not working, it's not a bad idea to rethink the strategy and maybe change the direction. So I share with you here a slide which gives a timeline of how the patent process works at Ghent University. But I mean, this is not something very specific for our institution. So these are the time spans that apply in general. So typically between this internal disclosure form has been filed to the tech transfer, and there is a decision on patent or not. This we try to keep limited. Sometimes the researchers are pressured because they submitted maybe a publication for a conference and it got accepted, and then maybe within 2 months or 1 month it is going to be published. So then we need to act quickly if we want to file a patent. Sometimes it's more relaxed, but nevertheless, this is usually quite quickly because it's internal decision. And then we make a priority filing. So there are some costs at this point. Then after 12 months, search reports from the patent office will be available. So we can see what's the feedback, how about prior art, and all these things. And then if everything is okay, we can go for PCT filing. 18 months from the priority filing, the patent application will be published. So now at this moment, the information becomes public, no secret anymore. And then one milestone that we consider is kind of a decision point at our institution. It's not really a rule, but we try to follow this in most cases. So once we are after 30 months from the priority filing, it's time to enter into national or regional phase. So we need to take the decision, okay, we will enforce our patent in these and those countries. And for each country, there is a additional fee that needs to be paid. So we consider this is a good point to revise the results of any marketing and contacts that we have been able to make with potential partners. So if there is already a license in the meantime, then of course we will pursue the patent. If there are some valid opportunities, some strong opportunities, and some good indicators that we can actually make a deal on this patent, we will also continue. But if this is all vague and there is no really promising direction, then we will seriously rethink everything again, and maybe this is then a point where we need to give up and stop this patent. So one way of how we can go about taking the decisions throughout the patent process. In this slide, I put some statistics just for curiosity. So there was a report last year about, they say, most innovative universities in the world, and then I picked 3 from different continents. So there is Stanford, KU Leuven in Belgium, and National University in Singapore. What I wanted to draw your attention to, so which domains we have most patents in. So in some segments, market segments, it's mandatory to have a patent. So there you don't need really to think a lot, except when if this is really novel enough and promising. But in some sectors, patents are not really that important. But okay, what you can see here, pharmaceuticals and biotech. So no matter the geographical location, there will be always most patents filed in that segment. Then agriculture, food, and then chemicals and medical healthcare. So maybe the exact percentages are a bit varying from one university to another, but those are the next 2 ones on the list. And then all the other segments are taking up like 25 to 35%. So just some figures to consider. Okay, and then when we are talking about the IP protection, so no matter if we have a patent or not, most common way of bringing this IP into exploitation is through licensing agreements, and there we need to look at how the licensing revenue is going to be modeled. So I put here some examples. In principle, what happens quite often, in my experience at least, is that it will be a hybrid model, so some combination of these different options. So we can work with upfront fees. So the moment that there is a license agreement signed, there will be a payment. It's a one-time payment, and that's it. It can be in some milestones. So as I mentioned before, oftentimes an invention coming out of university is not directly ready to be put in the market. So there is going to be some further development, maybe testing, adjustments, building it into a product and so on. So it makes sense in those cases that there is some kind of milestones defined, and then at different milestones, certain portions of the revenue of the license fee are being paid. Also, it can be about royalties, and then we can say sales royalties. It's like a percentage of product sales or service sales. And so we can say like 10% of all sales is coming as a revenue. But then we can also put some constraints around that. So we can put a cap. This is usually what companies will ask. But it again depends from one market segment to another. So we say, okay, it's 10% of product sales up to, let's say, 500K or 1 million or 100K, depends on yeah, what's the actual value. We can also say, especially when there is more risk, so if it's a spin-off or it's a company with maybe less experience in the segment or so, it's wise to think about minimum annual royalties so that we secure that at least we will receive so much revenue. And that means that, for example, annual, at least they will pay 20K or 10K or something, even if they have no sales. And then what is often done with the spin-offs of universities, so university gets some equity in the company, and then at the exit point, they will get some return from that. As I said, what I see most often is some kind of hybrid model. So we say, for example, there is like an upfront fee, which is maybe a smaller one, and then we go for sales royalties, or we include this minimum, either annual or, I mean, the yeah, time span can be different, doesn't have to be annual. We can work in different ways. So this is about the licensing revenue. And then here again, I put in some examples, some statistics. So for example, from this survey in Europe, one point to look at, so out of all the active patent families for 2019, so it's actually a little bit less than 20% that got licensed or optioned. All the rest, there was no return, there was no revenue coming from these patents. So the process of actually exploiting a patent is a non-trivial one, and it requires a lot of time and effort, and there is often not really certainty that we are able to get a license on a patent. So that's why universities are quite careful about putting money into patents filing. So they try to evaluate as best as possible, but of course, not everything is successful. You can see some statistics also from Stanford University, for example, for 2019-2020. So their Office of Technology Licensing reports that they have evaluated close to 600 new invention disclosures. Out of these 600, they decided to well, they were looking for some license deals. And then, so from 600, 121 inventions actually ended up in some kind of a license or an option. An option typically means that there is a reservation so that university is not offering this technology to anyone else for a certain limited period of time until the company is able to either do some tests or take the decision or something like that. But it's a temporary agreement. So from these 121, 56 licenses were like non-exclusive, so they can still make new deals on these inventions. 35 licenses were exclusive, so they have one license deal and then they cannot talk to the others about this because it's yeah, exclusive. And then there are 30 option agreements, so still not clear, not decided. Now, 42 out of these 121 agreements were with own startups, and 23 of those involved equity. So yeah, typically with own spin-offs, we would go for exclusive licenses in most cases, but maybe it's not necessary in some cases, but quite often there is also equity involved. I think this is pretty much similar, at least in many universities. So the differentiation here between spin-off and startup. So spin-offs are companies that are actually built on the technology that is coming from the university. So there is a license agreement at least between them, or equity maybe. And startups are just companies who are that are created by university staff. So somehow a result of the work at university, but not necessarily directly exploiting the technology that was created at the university. And here is some split of the commercial revenue that is coming from IP. So you can see the main portion, like close to 50%, is coming from patent licenses. Interesting thing is that at many or most universities, it will be that only a small number of license deals is actually bringing the most of this income, and all the rest is much smaller. And often these are in pharmaceuticals, but not necessarily. And then gross revenue from cashed-in equity. So what goes into spin-offs is around 20%, and all other commercial revenue is around 30%. And with other, this is referring to software licenses, material licenses, and any other licenses that could arise from these deals. Okay, we have already seen this slide. Now, I wanted to just tell you about one example. This is from Ghent University. So technology is called Sniper. So it's basically simulation solution. So when new architectures are being built for computers, so either for PC, but also for embedded, like for mobile phones or for cars and so. So building new architecture is a long and expensive process, and it's very useful to be able to do some simulations along that design process. So the solution that was encompassed by Sniper is one such solution. So basically it enables efficient simulations, very flexible. And so this technology has been patented about 10 years ago. The patent has been filed about 10 years ago. However, in the first years, there was no income, there were no licenses for quite a while. So this is one of the cases where we continued still in keeping the patent active, even though there was no valorization. But there was some promise or indications that we can have something, and it's actually in the last 2 years we had several licensing deals for this technology. And in terms of licensing models, they are actually non-exclusive, so we can still continue licensing this technology. And it's also limited in use, which means because this simulation framework is meant for internal use. So it's meant for the design of the architecture. So typically it's used by the researchers of the company who are, or the designers of the company who are licensing the technology. and they don't make it part of the product. So they only use it in the design process. So then the licensing agreements are always stating that the use by the licensee is restricted to this type of activities. Currently, we are discussing with one company a deal where we are looking to do some additional research next to this patent, so building on what is there for this patent. And also they are potentially interested in making this simulation framework part of their offering. So then it's a little bit different conditions of the licensing. It's still non-exclusive. However, then they would get the right, if this bill goes through, they would get the right to also kind of sub-license, so they can sell this to their customers. In the previous deals we had, that was not allowed. Okay, so this closes the chapter about IP protection. And then, Anna, I'm looking if we want to take a small break now, maybe, or?
Yes, before the break, we have a question from David.
Please.
He said, we have heard that European Union transitioned to a European Patent Office, unitary patent system. Has Gen evaluated in which case it will be strategic to pursue this on future disclosures? Sorry.
I am not exactly sure. Can you tell me what would be the EPO unitary patent system?
I don't know if David can open his microphone for the question.
Hey, can you hear me?
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Hi, Zena, and thank you, Anna, for reading it out loud. I'm kind of in between office and the presentation because it's so interesting. So first of all, thank you so much for sharing this information. It's super helpful. So I work in tech transfer as well. So in my office, we've been discussing that the European Union is introducing a new unitary patent system that supposedly can help you file and then, of course, register for the whole unitary set of countries at the same time. And so, you know, we're still evaluating what that means, but just wanted to, you know, since you're already in Europe and so we're based in the US, you know, I just wanted to see if there was any insight from the region on whether it's strategic to file, you know, via the unitary system or on a country by country basis. And if you had a chance to discuss this internally.
Yes. So thank you for clarifying this for me further. So for what I know, we have been also looking into this, but I don't think that there is a final resolution yet. So we are still filing, at least like about 1 year ago when I had the last filing, we were still filing with this old system. So we make a filing, and that's then we still need to go for the decision at some point and which countries we are going to file. I actually think, well, depending on the cost, but this is just my personal point of view. So the university needs to take the decision. If the cost can be optimized in this way, I think it will be an attractive offering. But myself, I don't know the details about how the cost is going to be allocated. Because right now, what we typically do, it depends on technologies, of course. I can say in engineering. So we would typically file in US and selected countries in Europe. And then some cases we go for China, but it depends on how we see the market potential there. So it's still reasonably selective. So yeah, I would see personally that this kind of change would be welcome, but I think it will again depend on the costs. And I cannot say, sorry, I don't think that we have, at least I'm not up to date that we have a final take on this yet.
Got it. Understood. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the question.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Platisa. Thank you, David. I think we don't have any more questions for now. We can have the break for 10 minutes. It's okay, 10:50 to return here. Okay, thank you. 10 minutes break.
Thanks. See you
And
shortly.
we continue. See you.
Yes.
Hacer algo diferente.
Ver qué solución puedo dar que sea mejor en forma de eficiencia o que sea mejor económicamente viable o que lo haga de una forma más sostenible.
Se necesita conocimiento, se necesita contexto de las cosas, se necesita también tener visión.
Cuestionar lo actual, cuestionar las reglas, cuestionar los pensamientos, los procesos, para ver si se puede hacer algo mejor. Y siempre están en funcionamiento. Si uno tiene ganas de innovar, de hacer algo nuevo, puede ser un estudiante de la universidad, recién comenzando, puede ser un PhD, muy estudiado. Lo importante son siempre las ganas, ¿no?
En mi caso, principalmente, yo tenía un problema y eso me ayudó a innovar. No soy científico, no soy inteligente de la facultad.
La persona que quiere innovar tiene que pasar pensando las 24 horas del día, incluso hasta cuando duerme, en crear nuevas ideas.
Si uno no innova, la empresa fallece, la empresa fracasa.
Y si uno como empresa no está innovando sus procesos, sus productos, su conocimiento diariamente, va a llegar un momento en que la competencia podría estar encima tuyo.
Hay muchas personas que dicen, no, pero es que te podría ir mal. Sí, siempre te puede ir mal en cualquier cosa, ¿no? La cosa es tener ese ímpetu o esa motivación para hacerlo, simplemente por el hecho de hacerlo.
Cambio, hacer las cosas distintas.
Futuro, cambio disruptivo.
Hábito.
Nuevo.
Crear para mejorar.
Persistencia.
Perseverancia.
Constancia.
Acciones para un mundo mejor.
Riesgo, ganas también.
Pasión.
Conocimiento e impacto positivo en la sociedad.
Gente pila.
Las bases.
Corazón.
Madre, padre.
El segundo hogar.
Llevar una idea a la vida. Es ir contracorriente. Es salir de tu zona de confort. Es ir más allá de lo que la gente no ve.
Y confiar en eso. Ser persistente en esa nueva idea y tratar de ejecutar.
Ser innovador significa hacer las cosas de manera distinta. Cuando eres diferente, las personas se dan cuenta de eso y captas la atención de uno.
Por eso a lo mejor muchos innovadores suenan locos o las ideas suenan un poco descabelladas al principio, es parte de la naturaleza de hacer algo diferente.
Ver qué solución puedo dar que sea mejor en forma de eficiencia o que sea mejor económicamente viable o que lo haga de una forma más sostenible.
Se necesita conocimiento, se necesita contexto de las cosas, se necesita también tener visión.
Cuestionar lo actual, cuestionar las reglas, cuestionar los pensamientos, los procesos, para ver si se puede hacer algo mejor. Que siempre estén en cuestionamiento. Si uno tiene ganas de innovar, de hacer algo nuevo, puede ser un estudiante con universidad, recién comenzando, puede ser un PhD, un estudiado. Lo importante son siempre las ganas, ¿no? En mi caso, principalmente, yo tenía un problema y eso me ayudó a innovar. No soy científico, no soy inteligente de la facultad.
La persona que quiere innovar tiene que pasar pensando las 24 horas del día, incluso hasta cuando duerme, en crear nuevas ideas.
Si uno no innova, la empresa fallece, la empresa fracasa.
Y si uno como empresa no está innovando sus procesos, sus productos, su conocimiento diariamente, va a llegar un momento en que la competencia podría estar encima tuyo.
Hay muchas personas que dicen, no, pero es que te podría ir mal. Sí, siempre te puede ir mal en cualquier cosa, ¿no? La cosa es tener ese ímpetu o esa motivación para hacerlo, simplemente por el hecho de hacerlo.
Cambio. Hacer las cosas distintas.
Futuro, cambio disruptivo.
Hábito.
Nuevo.
Crear para mejorar.
Persistencia.
Perseverancia.
Constancia.
Acciones para un mundo mejor.
Riesgo, ganas también.
Pasión.
Conocimiento e impacto positivo en la sociedad.
Gente pila.
Las bases.
Corazón.
Madre, padre.
El segundo hogar.
Hi, Dr. Platisa. We can start.
Okay, so I'm going to share back my slides. Okay, so we continue. This is the final section of the session today. So I was going to talk with you a little bit about the value proposition. So the needs of the customers, the use of the value proposition canvas, and how we determine actually, or what are the factors that determine the net value of our invention. I mean, it's more a general thing from sales, but it applies for research as well. Okay, so let's start it. I actually wanted to play for you a small video clip, and I will give it a try, but I'm not sure whether this can work. Let's see. Probably not. You don't get to see my screen anymore, I think. See if I can do it. So just give me a quick second, please. So I try to share another screen. Let's see, I hope this works with the audio. If not, then we will skip this. Could you give me a sign, please, if you manage to hear it or not? Hello? Anna, could you hear the audio of the video or not?
No.
No. Oh, sorry. Then it was, yeah, I will skip. Then I had another video later, but I will skip the videos, and I have shared previously already the links with Anna. So maybe we can just put the links in the chat, and then you can watch it at a later moment. This is just some inspirational saying, but the point is, so Bill Fisher is a professor of technology management in Switzerland, and basically what he was saying a few years ago at the conference, that's what was the classical perception of innovation, that okay, we have a good idea, and so it means that it's a brilliant invention. It doesn't necessarily lead to an innovation, because from the point of invention to the innovation, there is a long way between the two steps. So invention is what we have at academia once we have created some very interesting research discovery, research results, but bringing that to the actual use and making it have some impact and actually bring innovation for the users, for the society, for the economy. There is a long step in between, as you could see from the stories so far, and probably from your experience already. So it's not as straightforward as it may look like. And the thing is that, of course, the fact that it's innovative is important, but to make it really into an innovation, what we need to care about is what are the needs of the users. So we often refer to them about as customers. So it's often about companies because there needs to be somebody in between the academia and the end user who can package everything in the right way and who can really bring it to the end user. End users and academia typically doesn't have the resources to take care of all that. So then we would spin off, or we would go and make partnership with existing companies or other types of institutions. But so it's really crucial to understand where the need is, or what is acceptable. So what we talk about is technology push. Sometimes researchers are having some interesting ideas, and scientifically they are very exciting. And so then they make an attempt to kind of push this technology. So they have a new idea and they want to push it to the market. And sometimes it will work, other times not. And I think it's more often that it will need some reshaping before it's actually ready to get accepted by the users. So I will have some example later in my talk about one of the many cases where this has been the case. So it's very important for the researchers to like listen to the market, to the partners, especially when there is collaboration with the company. So of course, companies will not always know how exactly to solve the problem. That's why they are coming to the university. However, they will know what can work for them and what not. And that's the point of discussion. So if we are designing some solution, which we know we expect will work in this way, or is it then acceptable, or is it the right way to approach solving certain problem, or maybe we need to switch or to adapt a little bit the direction of how we are doing it. So listening to the customers and thinking together with them, also inviting them to give feedback on what we have in mind from the research side is becoming really crucial these days. And okay, here we come to this one case study, just to give you some example of what it is I'm referring to. So it concerns the work of at the University of Antwerp a few years ago. So one professor, Martin Wayne, came up with a innovative solution. So there was some telemetric badge that could be used to put on an object or on a person. And so basically his idea was that this can be used to locate a person in a chemical plant. And then when there is a fall or any kind of accident, then some administrators would be alerted about that. And so he went on, they talked to the company. However, the feedback from the industry and from the unions was with privacy. So in this way, basically, because you are tracking a person throughout the working floor, it means that it's infringing on the privacy, and this is not going to be accepted. So that was the first reaction that was faced from the field, so to say. And of course, then one way would be to ignore this and to still go and talk to another and check and confirm or not. But in this case, okay, the feedback was there was agreement that the privacy was a big issue here. So that was not the right use case, at least for this technology. And so in this case, the researchers were listening to the feedback, and they continued, had more discussions with the industry. And in fact, they came up with a slightly different use case, basically. So the technology is more or less not a lot was changed there. However, instead of keeping track of the persons, then this switched to measuring the position of the walls. And you can see here in the picture some illustration of what's meant. So the invention is this yellow part, which are some sensors. And then it's basically what was missing in the industry and where the invention could find its application. So you realize from the first idea of tracking people to the idea of measuring the position of the balls, it's not obvious. I wasn't personally involved there, but from the stories that I heard about it, and also just if you think now, it's not obvious how you switch immediately from tracking persons with some sensors to looking at these small balls. However, having open discussion, trying to think together, trying to understand, okay, what the technology can do, and then exploring for the cases. Of course, you need to have right people around the table. Not everybody is even willing to get engaged. I mean, not everybody from the industry in this case is even willing to get engaged in this kind of discussion. But there will be always those people who are like intrigued by the innovation and who want to get involved, and those are basically the best ones to have this kind of discussion. So they are willing to spend some time and to do brainstorms and to look for solutions. Of course, not each and every discussion is going to lead to a final solution, but in this case, in the end, they were able to come to a new use case, basically. So the technology was slightly redesigned, and so to be able to then fit the needs of such a use case. And in the end, there was a spin-off started, and so they are still offering this today as a product. So it's a spin-off of University of Antwerp and IMEC here in Belgium. There will be many such examples, and in fact, when we listen to the stories of many spin-offs, things are changing quite substantially from the first idea that the spin-off kicks off with. To what eventually becomes their business model, their approach, their type of customers. So it's all an evolution, and the main point there is to really stay up to the task. So not to give up, but to remain persistent, to listen to the feedback, see how you can adapt, try to modify something, and then okay, get new feedback, rework again until there is a working solution. So basically that everything can match the offering and the business model. So yeah, it's an exploration. That's also why some researchers are not immediately excited about going into entrepreneurship, and they prefer to stay, let's say, in the comfort of academic environments, because of course there you don't directly need to deal with these kinds of things, but really for a spin-off and for the team who is stepping into a spin-off, this is very important, yeah, to be open to feedback and to be ready to change as they go along the process. So this was just one example, and it is to say that, even though there is a need, of course, in working floors that you can safely identify when there was a fall or an accident with the worker, this was not the right way to go about it. And so with some open-mindedness and the willingness to explore further, it was possible to find an alternative use case. And so this is now a successful offering of a running company. Here are some ways about how to uncover the needs of the customer. So one model that is interesting to use is the so-called Kano model. It was originating in Japan. So it's basically looking at the achievement. So the horizontal axis is like the achievements, are the expectations of the customer fulfilled or not. And then the vertical axis is about the satisfaction of the customer. So up there we have a happy customer, and in the bottom two squares, not so happy one. So what are the parameters here? This red line is talking about must be like basic requirements. So let's say if you are going to produce a car, a new car, of course, it needs to be able to take you from one place to another with a certain speed. So some basic functionality. So this is what is like mandatory. You are not even thinking about it. If it's a car, it needs to be able to run at certain speeds and to safely move from one location to another. This is something basic that's there. And then there is like desired quality. So the more you can do of this, the better. So these are some like add-ons that we may offer in the car, for example, or in a mobile phone, and which are like nice to have, or not nice to have, but desired. So this is something that the customer would like to have, and so it would easily they would easily turn to another car make if this feature was not there. And then what this feature is going to be, that depends from one profile of a driver to another. But then what goes on top of that are some delighters or wows. So if you have, for example, 3 different makes of cars, the prices are similar. And then for one type of driver, a wow is going to be some fancy electronics, maybe some fancy displays in the car. For another one, it's going to be maybe something else, maybe something about the design and so on. So it's important to have some interaction with the customer, to test, to understand, to recognize, or to uncover what are especially these delighters. So it's also what in sales they say it's the exciters or the delighters that are selling the product. These the basic requirements. If you don't have them, then it's too bad. It will never work. And the desired quality, some kind of basic, but a little bit more than that. So yeah, that makes your customer satisfied, but it's still not enough. So this is one model that is potentially helpful to understand where the customer needs lie. Quite traditionally used in also in the world of innovation are the customer value proposition diagrams. So basically we are looking to, on the first step, identify the profile of our customer. So to understand really what is it that the customer is trying to solve, first where the problems are and how they try to solve it, or what they need to solve. But then also to go beyond that and to understand what are really the pains and the gains. And this is also going a little bit emotional. So when we talk to companies, the first discussions are usually on the more kind of obvious and straightforward. So, okay, these are our jobs. This is what we need to do. We need maybe to optimize some process internally, or we need to be able to see in the dark, or we can, there are certain obstacles that appear throughout the life cycle of a product, and then the customer is looking how to solve that. But then it's also, there is some really no-goes, and there are some emotional points, and if we can address some of those emotional points, especially the most painful, the most important one as perceived by the customer, that's like a winning point. So on the one hand side, yeah, we are looking at the customer profile, and then we need to go and look at our invention. Of course, we are making first choices of these customer profiles by some of our intrinsic thoughts. And so we have designed an algorithm that is going to detect pedestrians very accurately, also in difficult environment conditions. So we will go first and talk maybe to companies who are offering sensors for these kinds of conditions, or we will go and talk to the cities who are concerned about how all this is performing, or maybe to the police. So we need to find out, to understand a little bit how the market is organized, who are the key players, and then do some search first online. Today we can do a lot of online, but then also go out and talk to these customers and try to build this customer profile, and then look at our value map and try to basically, yeah, to map the values of our invention to the customer profile. Then if we discover that there is a good match, then we need to go out and retest again. So what is our values how are we mapping to the customer profiles? Maybe we need some adjustments. And so what's important here is that not one value map is going to work for all customer profiles. So if our customers are, as in the previous examples, manufacturers of the cameras and cities, they will probably have different, certainly pain points. And so we need to identify those. And then even with the same invention, we might be able to satisfy both, but then we need to think about, to prepare how we are going to present, how we are going to sell the value of our invention for them. So how is it that we are solving exactly what bothers them? And it's important, but it's not directly in this scheme, but we need to be aware of that all this time. So who are the competitors? In most cases, we are bringing an invention that's improving some performance, some efficiency, or optimizing certain processes. So customer will already be handling that type of jobs or tasks in some way. Maybe it's suboptimal or far from optimal. Nevertheless, they are still somehow solving, dealing with that kind of tasks. So how is it that they are doing it today? That's important to understand. And also, like, how easy or difficult we may see the process of change. So if with our invention, now the customer needs to change the whole way of working, are they going to be eager to even try our invention? We will oftentimes face that this is not exactly so easy. So it's about teaching customers of new approaches and new possibilities, and that's a task, a challenge in itself. But we need, I mean, it's not something that should block our invention. So we don't want to stop there. We just need to be aware, and also then as part of our strategy to exploitation of the technology, we need to think about that as well. So how are we going to learn our customers to accept this new technology? Yeah, and of course we need to know who are the competitors. So if we are bringing as invention something which is better than what exists in the market, but nevertheless the others are approaching it in a similar or even the same way. So if it's really some specific features that if we do the measurements, okay, we are 5% more efficient. You need to balance. If let's say a hospital is going to buy now new scanners because they are doing something in a better way, so maybe the quality of images that they produce is better. However, the investment is also large in that case. So we need to think and how much needs to change in their protocols with this new device. So things need to all fit nicely if we are going to step into the market. So all these things, of course, need to be addressed, and we need to search for a solution. None of them is necessarily a blocking point, but it's important to be aware of these things and to then make a plan on how to address the different aspects. And we learn as we go, of course. If we spend now 5 years in the lab trying to understand all these things, and it will be too late and there will be new inventions coming out. So it's important that we go in the field and on the way solve different obstacles. Just mentioning some of the common mistakes when we define the customer profile and the value map. So this is what we do not want to do. So as I was just saying, different customer segments need different profile and different mapping of the values. And then we should focus not only on solving the main problems, the technical problems, so to say, of the customer, but also need to think about uncovering the pains and gains, because this is actually what is in most cases going to make the decision. In value maps, we need to select, okay, this is here for like not writing down all products and services. It depends on when you have an invention, it will have different features maybe. So maybe that's like a package. And then when we are mapping the values to the customer needs, we really need to focus only on those most important. So if there are some other like add-ons, that's nice, and we should not lose sight of those. But then we should really focus on also when we talk to a potential customer, we need to be able to summarize really where is the key gain rather than give them a 2-hour story about each and every feature. So we need to recognize together with the customer what are the key points for them, and then how we are addressing very specifically those key points. And can be, of course, these functional jobs, so the main problems that they are trying to solve, but also a little bit these hidden like pains. And that is typically discovered either through spending some time with the customer, really going through their process of working, or having a discussion, or maybe giving them a prototype and listening to their feedback. So it can be in different ways, also depends on what invention we are looking at. Okay, so here is one example I took just for some illustration. So we think about the Tesla car, and then a customer segment of male with a quite solid income, so they have no issue paying for the car, but then they want to, of course, they want to drive, they want to look successful, they want to have occasional long distance trips. And then what are the gains for them? Safety, of course, but also design, status, brand, and they also may care about charging time and speed. However, they have some potential pains, so scratches, empty battery, maybe having some problems then being laughed at, so that's not good. Lots of recharging, not very handy. And so we don't necessarily need to address each of these with our solution, but we need to pick out, ideally we need to recognize what are the most painful points, what are the most attractive gains, and give them an idea of how we are resolving these, because that might be already enough. And then here we can think about some specific features of the car which are addressing, and for some you can make a direct mapping, for some yeah, you might be not directly addressing them, but that's fine. It's not like every small aspect or every small point identified here needs to be addressed. We need to solve the main ones for sure, and then the others might come into play at a later moment, but they will not be breakers. Now, as we looked here, so this was for one customer segment. Now, yeah, identify priorities. This is what I was talking about. So we don't need to solve everything, but see what are the key priorities and be sure to address those with our invention. If we discover that our invention is not capable of really solving the problems of that type of customer, then probably this is not the right customer profile for us. And so we need to search further. And so then we start again, but with a new customer profile. However, think about just in this very simple case. So we have done this exercise, but then we want to apply this for a customer segment, which are families with young kids. So you can, I think, immediately see that the pains and especially the gains here, okay, maybe some of these are still relevant, like safety for sure, charging time, but then also some other things come into play. So what about the comfort, and can you fix the children's seats in the car and things like that? So then it immediately changes the focus, and these pains and gains are potentially changing. So in any case, we need to revisit what we have done here, or even rebuild it from scratch, depends on how much it's changing. But so this is just to give you a very obvious illustration that the customer segment really matters. And so we need to redo this exercise for different segments, different profiles of potentially interesting customers. Now, the next step is going to business model canvas, or in some way designing the business model. I will not go into that today. So I would assume you have at least heard of this, or already even used it, but definitely useful, because it's touching on all the different points. So how you are actually going to bring the invention to use, and especially with the spin-off, then this is a critical point. So this needs to be thought of. It doesn't mean that you will not change, of course, quite naturally, this will evolve over time, but it's important to think about all these aspects and to put something there as a first idea, and then go out, test it, and revisit and update based on the feedback and based on the new learnings, right? So this is one format of a unique value proposition. So elevator pitch. So what happens a lot is that you will maybe just by coincidence run into somebody who is potentially an interesting partner, or even when you have the first contract with a carefully pre-selected potential partner, it's important to be able to summarize the value of what you are proposing briefly. And this is often a challenge for researchers, especially those who haven't already been dealing with this kind of contacts. So researchers will typically tell a lot, often a lot on the technical level about their invention. And if they are talking to a peer, to a technical person, that's well appreciated and well understood. But if it's going towards maybe a bit higher up management, even doesn't have to be too high up, but like project manager, so they want to receive a condensed message, and to we want to get them hooked up early on. If we need 3 meetings to let them understand what's the value and what our invention is about, then it's too difficult. They will usually not have the time to listen to us that long. So you should really prepare and know what is our condensed message, and then this type of like a template, or you can find this in many formats, but basically the information is the same that needs to be in this message. So we need to know who is our target customer, what kind of need they have, what functional job from these diagrams we are solving, what our product is about. So are we selling a car or an engine, or we are saying an algorithm or a new sensor or some process. So we need to kind of categorize what it is that we are bringing. What is the key benefit, but in light of what we understand so far about the needs of the customer, it's good if we can compare. So immediately say that, okay, there's many other solutions, but unlike them, we can do it faster, or we can do it more accurately, or whatever is our key advantage. And yeah, that's about it. That's the very short message that we need to communicate in the early discussion. And of course, if it's a serious partnership consideration, then we will have time to go into technical details to discuss all those things. So the main message is here, validate this. So the first version of this needs to come reasonably quickly. So it's not something you want to spend months on figuring out what's your elevator pitch. So what are the key differentiators of your program? So it's good to do some prior research to understand a little bit the market, what's going on, to have some conversations, probably not immediately with your direct customers or target customers, so that you can prepare a little bit the strategy for the targeted ones. And then, yeah, go out and test the idea. And I mentioned some ways how you can test. So it's important to be aware of the time and your own energy and the money. So if you are building prototypes, maybe it doesn't have to be a full working prototype, but just something which is sufficient to illustrate the idea and to get some feedback from the customer. If you need to, yeah, invest in some test prototypes, it's also good to be smart about that, to optimize. Of course, you need to make some investment, to spend some time and energy, but it's good to use it as wisely as possible. And the more you do it, the better you will know. But that's how it works. It's perfectly fine. So it's important to test, to learn from the feedback, and make this iteration. So what you have learned, try to implement that in a certain way. Of course, you don't want every week to create a new prototype, but yeah, if you have like a few prototypes on the way to a product, then it's quite fine and even quite common. Okay, and now I wanted to address something that I briefly touched upon already before. So what is the, in business thinking, so there is, of course, value of your invention. So what added value, what extra value it can bring for a customer, for a company, for a user, it doesn't matter. However, if, for example, we are looking at the partnership and the company is going to build our innovative technology into their product, it's very important that they can understand what are the risks there, like start from the technical risks. So because it's not a final product already, so they will need to do some modifications, adaptations, some things will change from the measurements that we have done in the lab once you are really in the field. And so there will be certain risks there, and it's good that we can already think about these risks beforehand, be honest about that, and be able to mention these risks, of course, not in the first meeting when we are discussing what this is about, what is the main value, but the customers, of course, will know that there is risks involved, and it is good if we can show that we are aware of the risks, we have thought about it, and ideally we have some ideas of how to go about those risks. So if things will turn this way, then okay, as a way around, we might solve it in some other way. Or maybe there are some risks that we are not able to solve, but it's just the risk of innovation. That's also a possibility. So it's good to also consider this and to be honest and realistic about the invention, because of course, as researchers, we're always very enthusiastic and we think, oh, this is now something really extraordinary, the best thing, and okay, if there are some risks, let's just go forward. But it's important to pay to address some thoughts to it and think about how we might go about should those risks really come into play. And the other element is, of course, trust. So what I talked about at some point before. So it's really important, of course, we may have some credibility based on the publications, based on our image in the scientific world, maybe even in the entrepreneurial world. So that, of course, builds trust. But if that's not there, it is, I mean, with or without that, it's a lot about personal contact. And so things will always need to click. So it's difficult to sell an innovation to create this without personal contact. And there it's to some extent a skill, and to some extent it's just how it will work out. But keep in mind that this is something very important. So especially for some simple things, like if we make some agreements with a partner during the discussions, it's good that we would follow through those. So if we say that we will do some extra experiments or send some materials, so please do that. Good to invite them to your lab so that they can see the environment, that they can meet the people. So these things are often helping, and it's definitely this trust element is what should be not neglected. Yeah? So this is in the end what determines the net value, so to say, of the deal that we can make in the end. So it was unintentional. Okay, so here I had another few comments selected from several of the industry or academia representatives, but I will send you the link so you can look. It's another 1 minute or so, the clip. But again, it's about we need to work together with the industry, with the companies, we need to, this is partly also, for example, what is my role at our university and of my colleagues. So to motivate researchers to get in contact really with companies, to even just exchange sometimes their visions, their ideas, to understand a little bit how the business world is working, because there is a lot of friction there. So what are the intrinsic mentality of academia and of business? So researchers usually like the freedom of the academic environment. Companies, on the other hand, cannot afford that. So that's one point. But then the other is really, if we have any intention of bringing our research results into use, then it's important to be aware of what is acceptable, what the companies can bring forward as products, or what the end users can accept for use, and also at a given point in time. Because maybe 10 years from now, this will be just straightforward to bring such certain innovation to the market, but at a given moment, maybe there are obstacles, and we then need to search for ways of how to address it. That's also why there are spin-offs being created by people with a lot of experience with spin-off, but sometimes we miss some aspects, and that's fine, but we just need to try our best and do the most we can to make it a success. Okay, so this brings me to the end of what I have prepared to tell you about today. So if, we have, I think, just about the right timing. So I would now open the floor for all your questions and comments. And maybe from my side, I would love to hear from you, like what do you take as take-home message from our session today? Did you find something especially interesting or not interesting? Or do you agree or disagree with some of these points? Especially if you had the chance to try some of these things in your practice, then I would love to hear from you with any experiences. So. I'm not hearing you, Anna. I'm not sure if it's... I don't know about the others, but I cannot hear it.
We cannot hear you, Anna.
Okay, I was thinking that maybe that's something on my side, but it's... maybe I see that Daniel has raised a hand, so maybe we can continue while Anna fixes the problem.
Yes. Hi, Ljiljana. Good to see you.
Hello, Daniel. Nice to see you too.
Yeah, it's a pity we can not meet here in Ecuador, but thanks for your talk. It is quite interesting, the topic. I was just wondering, when you have complex problems and you need an interdisciplinary group of researchers, how these kind of things are managed in Ghent? Because usually, well, here in Ecuador, we have at the spot we have faculties, but we don't have departments. It's a different organization. We have faculties that have the professors working on some topics, but again, I know because I've been there, we have departments that can be multidisciplinary, and there are some difficult products that perhaps a company wants to fund research or do some development, and then you need a relatively big group of researchers. How you can manage all these collaborations?
Yes. Yeah, so we have experience with that. It's still not majority of projects. So most often this happens in these subsidized projects, especially European ones, but sometimes also local funded projects. But it will typically be so the technology transfer office is central for the whole university. So all faculties, all departments, they work with the same central technology office, and including also the university hospital in Ghent. So in that sense, when we need to make a contract, that will all go through the same office. Sometimes, yeah, we need to agree which legal, which IP advisor is going to take it up. But that's, yeah, typically a smooth thing, no issues there. So I would say we tackle it the same as if it would be with a single group alone. It's mostly done to make sure that the groups are aligned internally. I mean, if we have a group from, let's say, bioengineering and the science faculty, maybe. So we just need to align on some, yeah, basic things about how we are going to how we are going to split the work, who takes the lead, who takes the responsibilities for which tasks. So, but this is, I see, very important when we, before the project starts, clearly distribute the responsibilities between the different groups. Because when it's one group, then it's the professor typically who takes the charge, and then he's or she is responsible to settle everything. But when we have more groups involved, then we try to work with even very simple, like Excel tables or something, to actually have a written document which indicates what are the tasks and responsibilities for different groups. And we also split the budgets beforehand, so everybody agrees on those, and then it works quite fine. Sometimes I had it that, yeah, things were vaguely defined in the very beginning, and then everybody expects the other side to do more or less, or they are not clear about that. So that's not very helpful. But whenever we have settled things clear in the beginning, then it's okay. And for any administrative points, it's the central office anyhow who is handling this, so they can agree between themselves. So it's this is not distributed among
okay. Yeah. I understand, because here it's a bit different. Every faculty or lab has its, well, they get a project and then they invite other researchers, and then, okay, we don't have like a central office that coordinates between us, the administrative part. It's just an informal agreement, and then, okay, we submit the project. And yeah, well, as some of my colleagues said, having companies funding research is not very common here. We just try to do that now, but that is still a long way, I guess. And the other question but it was most very specific question about your work. I see that you are working still in that I know is still active, because when I left again, it was in the beginning, and it was Siddhartha that was I think heading this department, and now it's you.
Yes. So in the meantime, Siddhartha has transitioned to a professorship, so he is now a full-time professor. And so well, I actually started in this position like 3 years ago, shortly before the Corona time and everything.
Okay.
So sometime 2019, in the just before summer holidays. Yeah, but so he's still at the university. He was actually the link between Guido and myself to arrange for these sessions. But he now changed position, so he's doing.
Oh yeah, no, that's good to know that I know is still working, because at some in the past we actually did some work together. I remember in crowdsourcing and this transit management and things like that. We did small projects together with the support of Final. Okay, that's
Nice.
good to hear that it's still active, and probably we'll have a talk about that in the future because it's an interesting topic, this mobility stuff for us.
Yeah, so the Siddhartha is still partly working on that, also other groups, and yeah, there is quite some activities in that sector now at Ghent University. So yeah, we can definitely pick it up at when you have time, or if you are still active there, for sure.
Yeah, great to hear that. I think Carla is back online. Let me give the chance to others to ask questions, and then thanks and nice
Thank
afternoon there.
It's good to see you even virtually.
Oh yeah, I hope to be there in November in Ghent.
Okay, that will be very nice.
Sure.
I'm still not hearing you.
Yeah, we cannot hear you, Anna. I think something is wrong with your microphone, Anna.
Buenas tardes. Invitamos a todos los que aún tengan preguntas para que activen sus micrófonos y puedan consultarle a la doctora Ljiljana en caso de que tengan preguntas.
It's a pity, but it's still not coming through. Maybe if anyone else still wants to share any experience or to make any comment, perhaps what would be that you found the most directly relevant for what you're doing? That's what would be nice to hear from you. So from what we talked about today, if you are involved in any of these type of activities, or if you are intending to get involved.
Bueno, listo, si todo está claro y nadie más tiene preguntas respecto de la charla que hemos tenido ahora. Ljiljana, it's a pleasure to have you today. So we thank you a lot. We hope we can collaborate with you again and some other times. So really, we're really thankful about that. And finally, nosotros agradecemos a Lear Network Ecuador por el apoyo que nos ha permitido tener a la doctora Ljiljana aquí en esta charla. Agradecemos también a la Comisión Europea por el apoyo, recordando que la responsabilidad de la información sobre este programa en este sitio refleja los puntos de vista del autor y la Comisión no será responsable de ningún uso de la información contenida en el mismo. Agradecemos a todos por su tiempo. Les deseamos una excelente tarde.
Hola. So I'm not sure if I understand quite correctly, but I understand that we are now going to close the session, or do you want still to?
No, yeah, we're close. Okay. You want to say something now?
Okay. No, from my side as well, I only wanted to thank you very much again for the invitation. It was a great pleasure really to get the feedback during the session. So it was a great experience, and I'm so happy that we had an opportunity to connect even in this way. And I do hope to be able to meet at some point in the future also really in person to have more interactive, free-format discussion. So thanks a lot again to everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you all. Gracias. Gracias a todos.